Oh, it's so magical. Um, Dina, do we have a number of how many are coming?
Little over 140.
Thank you.
Maria, I like the virtual background you have. It's cool.
Northern Lights are wonderful. I saw them one time.
Me too.
Also in Michigan.
I saw them in Maine.
I went to Iceland twice and missed them both times. Yeah. Good times. So hi everybody, welcome to our December SLT. We have getting ready to start. Mr. Henderson is going to kick us off. I just want to give a quick reminder for our observers who will be speaking at the end. Please make sure to have your comments limited to 60 seconds. Mr. Henderson and I will have a timer going, and we will let you know when you reach your 60 seconds so that you'll yield your time to the next person. All right, it's all yours, Mr. Henderson.
Great, thank you. So we actually have a very short agenda this time, and as usual, the first thing on the agenda is the review and approval of the minutes for last month's meeting. That was sent out to members of the SLT, I believe last week. So could we please go ahead, take a moment and review them? And I'll give you a moment to read them. And if there's anything that needs changing, let us know.
There's actually one issue that needs to be corrected, and that is that I put the wrong title in for Miss Ingram. She is the director of, I already forgot, but not the parent. She has a different title.
Family engagement.
Thank you, and I fixed in the master copy, so that's already done.
Thank you very much.
Yep.
And Ms. Maggio, your volume is a little low, which I know is ironic.
First time anyone's ever said that.
I don't know if it's Zoom or if it's my computer, but my volume's been going in and out all week.
Okay, well, listen hard. Are there any changes that need to be made to the minutes from last week? That month, whatever. Do we have any motions to accept the minutes, approve the minutes?
Motion to approve the minutes.
Seconded.
Thank you, Ms. And it looks like we got like 5 or 6 of them. So, all right, again, we are plowing right through that first agenda point, just like last time. Let's see if we can keep it up. The next thing on the agenda is a principal's update. So, Mr. Yu.
Thanks, Mr. Henderson, and happy holidays, everyone. We've got 4 key updates I want to make sure we go over. And again, just make sure everyone's all on the same page on this. So one was around student activity subcommittee. Unfortunately, we haven't reconvened, but I will be working with Mr. Wasowski. I think we're going to need to reconvene early January. However, there have been some headway. The SU was really gracious to draft some online club meeting rules, which they want to put up soon, and want to just make sure we're reviewing them. They look good so far, but just want to do one last review. And then also, Dr. Haber and I have been speaking around club advisors, and again, some of the expectations for club advisors, and thinking about some basic requirements, because part of this also is, thinking this idea where we potentially can compensate advisors as well. We had talked about this prior, so we have to work out the numbers, but if anything, we'd like to be able to have advisors for all of the clubs, and we know that there's an abundance of them, but thinking about what are some minimal requirements that we'd expect of advisors, and being able to work with them, because there are some things related to fundraising and collection of money, and so we want to make sure that we have adults who are going to be able to support in that effort. But the next step will be to work with Mr. Wasowski and then the subcommittee and get everyone reconvening in early January. Another key update that the DOE just recently sent out was around the specialized high school exam. There was a major announcement from the mayor. The specialized high school exam will definitively be administered based upon the announcement. And right now it's expected to start January 27th. Now, a few key things to take note, which we're still waiting for some details, is that the specialized exam will be offered in the middle school to the 8th graders. And so now that will happen in the middle schools. We do not know in what format or any more details beyond that, but that is expected to happen. So key points here are that the registration for the specialized high school exam in LaGuardia is opened on this past Monday on the 21st, and the deadline to register is January 15th. So these details have been announced pretty widely. We'll continue to monitor and provide updates. I know Ms. Ingram has been working to make sure that this information is going out. And again, we'll be working closely with middle schools as well, just in terms of being able to make sure that they're aware of some of the virtual open houses and information about Stuyvesant is readily available for prospective students. But the key thing at this point is the updates from the DOE about how the specialized high school exam will be administered in the middle schools, but that will be done in January. Another key announcement just around important piece of information is around testing. Again, January, there's going to we're going to be closing out on term 1, and so we want to make sure that there's some clarity here. We've put this out in our testing and our term calendar, but the week of the 19th through the 22nd of January, we've designated subjects for each of those days for unit and or in-class finals. And so these will be done and administered during class. The expectation is that if a unit or in-class final is provided or given, that there will not be a uniform final. So again, we're working with each of the departments to administer that. And if a course is not offering a unit or in-class final, then we'll continue to resume with classes. And again, this is important because again, the instructional time, we want to make sure we're utilizing all the instructional time that we have because the way that we did our programming. On the 25th, which is a Monday, we will run a special schedule. The day will be asynchronous in terms of instruction because we do have some uniform finals in math, which will include geometry, algebra 2, pre-calculus, and tech. And so Dr. Haber will be working with our team to look at the special schedule, but the rest of the day will be asynchronous. So we'll be working again with the departments to make sure that that's happening. And then the week of the 26th through the 29th, which was normally designated as Regents Week. Again, as everyone knows, Regents were canceled for January. And so we wanted to make sure we were utilizing this time as best we could. Again, each of the departments needed different things, but one of the things that we wanted to do was run a regular schedule. And so again, many of our departments and teachers will need that instructional time. So the way it's going to work is a regular schedule that we currently have, and on our calendar is designated as periods 1 through 5, 6 through 10, 1 through 5, 6 through 10. So we'll alternate between the 26th through the 29th. And during that time, each of our departments will be consistent in respects to how they will approach that week. So what we've asked is the department take a uniform approach. So for instance, English will be asynchronous that week, biology will be synchronous, and so forth. And so we're trying to create some levels of consistency within the departments, but we know that each of the departments need different things and best utilizing that time. So we want to be flexible with that, just knowing what we know around getting through instruction and being able to get through the content. The last thing I'll say about this is the 26th, again, is a TBD. Dr. Haber's going to talk about the PSAT and where we currently are, and we'll be providing a recommendation. We do want to make a decision fairly soon so we can plan accordingly. But the 26th is right now, again, the possibility that this could be a PSAT administration. But that will be the only kind of note on that. We'll be providing more details and making sure that this information gets out accordingly. It's already on our testing and term calendar, but again, I know our teachers are notifying and letting our students know about unit or in class finals, as well as what that week of the 26th will look like. And we'll be sure to to continue to give updates. All right, I'm going to hand it over to Dr. Haber, who's going to talk about the work that we've been doing and collecting to be able to determine whether or not a PSAT is possible.
Thank you, Mr. Yu. So for those that were not here last month, I just want to go over some things that I went over last month and add an update to that. So we've been working on the potential of offering the PSAT, the possibility of offering it on January 26th, which is the last day it could possibly be offered for what's called the fall PSAT. And we've continued our due diligence, and the steps that have been taken are, one, we did order the exams. Over 830 examinations were ordered. We looked at the venues, and the two venues we looked at were our schools, Stuyvesant High School, and also the Jacob Javits Center. The Jacob Javits Center, the hope was that we could do large number in a large space all at once. But as it turned out, maybe not surprisingly, we're limited to 50. The 50 is the most that any room can, the most people that can be in a room at the Javits Center. So that ruled that out. And then we go back to Stuyvesant High School. Yes, we have the ability to do so in terms of the rooms. And we have 8. The number is for safety reasons. The prediction is you put 8 students in a room and the teacher, and that is the proctor. And that would be based on that, we would need 2 proctors for the PSAT. It's like 4 hours. We need two proctors. So the next thing to look at was, do we have, what's the demand? So a survey was sent out to the 11th graders, and the 11th graders were chosen because of the National Merit Scholarship and the importance of the National Merit Scholarship, which does not affect the 10th graders. And that's why we knew we could have to lower our numbers. There was no way we could do over 1,600. That means both the 10th and 11th grade class. So we knew that right from the beginning. We went right down to limiting it to the 11th graders, which is over 800 students because of the National Merit Scholarship. And so we surveyed the students, and at this point, not at this point, at the end of the survey, 377 students said that they would be willing or likely be willing to take the examination. The issue is then the rooms, and the next issue is the availability of proctors and support staff and administrators, and the test coordinator, of course. And we also surveyed our teachers. And I remember approximately half of our teachers are on medical or on primary care accommodation. So they are out. They cannot proctor the exam. So of those remaining that are eligible to proctor, the numbers were so as that we could have test up to maximum of 64 students. 64 students. And this is taking in consideration adjustments for absenteeism. I adjusted many factors, and that's the number that I can comfortably say that we could offer the PSAT for. And that said, it's not feasible to do so. And my recommendation to the leadership team, and the principal, is that it's not offered.
I think a few things to note on this, and I know Dr. Haber's been doing our due diligence to find out as much information. And again, clearly not every junior responded as based on the numbers, and not every staff member responded. But I think the things that we were trying to take into account, and what I asked Dr. Haber to do, is take the information you currently have and be able to offer some recommendations on this. Now, granted, one key caveat that we didn't say is all of this is contingent upon whether or not school buildings will be open for high schools. So we have not gotten word on that yet. And again, I think we're at a place now where we're going to have to make key decisions. I've asked Dr. Haber, what's the kind of the deadline of which we need to make a final decision, and we believe it's that first week of January when we return back. So I do want to make a decision based upon the current information we do have. And something I will say in this, I think it's really important, the safety of everyone, students, staff, is really important. We felt it was really important because we had heard, and know that the PSAT has been top of mind. And so we continue and will continue to do our due diligence. But at the end of the day, when, if I have to make a final decision or when I have to make that final decision, safety will be top of my priority list. And we'll be looking clearly at what is feasible, as Dr. Haber said. But based upon what we're currently seeing, again, while the interest may be there from students, a lot of the other operational factors are not. And again, we will work with Dr. Haber and continue to work with the DOE. We've put out word, asking when we will find out about whether the school buildings will be open. We have not heard yet, but that will be a critical factor in all of this. And again, we do want to make sure everyone is safe if we are able to administer the PSAT. But right now, based upon the initial recommendation, does not look very feasible. So we wanted to make sure everyone was aware of this, and I appreciate Dr. Haber and all the work that he has been doing in terms of the outreach to the Javits Center and clearly to our students and our staff about what may be possible. So that's updates from me.
Great, thank you. Do we have any comments or questions from members of the SLT? Mr. Shaffron?
I think there are a couple of raised hands in the chat as well. But thank you for giving me one question for Dr. Haber. I know we ruled out the possibility for PSAT being offered in larger spaces that school has, mainly because, if I remember correctly, because of the public announcement system challenges. But there's a question if there's an opportunity to address that in some creative way, rather than trying to use the smaller rooms. Have that been considered, and is that an option?
So we would be limited to, if we were to do that, we'd be limited to, there's one test coordinator, that's me. We'd be limited to one space, since I'd be doing I'd be overseeing and doing, likely doing the reading. And so we're talking, I'm not going to give you a number. Give me a few minutes to calculate what the number would be if we were to use one of the larger spaces. But remember that, yes, it's potentially somewhat higher, but I have to give you I'd have to figure out the number and the spacing.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
You good, Mr. Shaffron?
Yeah, and I think I appreciate the opportunity to continue having this conversation. Principal Yu, if you and Dr. Haber have the date in mind when you need to finish making this decision, we really would like to make sure that either this community or at least PA has an opportunity to connect before that to discuss before the final decision is announced.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, this is what, again, as talking to Dr. Haber, again, since it's an operational issue, we're going to need that time. So wanting him to tell me what the absolute, deadline is. And so we'll make sure we connect. Hopefully we'll also get some guidance from the DOE about any decisions they're going to make around school buildings. That, again, is going to be a critical factor in all of this.
I actually thought through Mr. Shaffron's question. I'd like to respond to that. The largest spaces have a capacity of in the 60s, which is pretty much the exact same number that I came up with. That's just coincidentally. So any of the large spaces, we're talking about in the 60s, number of 60 some odd students that we could accommodate. That's what the numbers show. And also, just as an aside, I'm only the aspects that I am discussing are feasibility operationally. I'm not looking at the risks and rewards versus, the health risks, potential for, issues with COVID-19. I'm just purely looking at it from who we have available and the spaces we have. So that would not make any real difference in whether we used one space or if we used the rooms that I had described earlier. Thank you.
Dr. Haber, just also one thing that came up with that too, in terms of we were to utilize those larger spaces and the intercom's not available, there would need to be training. As Dr. Haber said, he's the testing coordinator for this. And so he is the one who would actually, when we do it in the classroom, makes those announcements when everything gets started. And so the uniformity of this is also an important piece in figuring out if we could even do that, having multiple people within those different spaces, because again, we'd have to do a lot more logistical thinking on that. But that's another piece that we're also having to consider with the utilization of those larger spaces.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I would love to pause for a second and get rules clarification from Ms. Maggio and from whoever else. We have 2 more hands up. Both are alternates, and just the 2 clarifications I would love for all of us. 1, alternates can speak in response to each item, or do they speak at the end?
And as long as all of the other members of the SLT don't have a comment. And we're still within our time allotted within the agenda.
Okay.
Which we are.
Okay. Hold on 1 second.
Okay.
My son is yelling.
He's adorable though. We love it. Just me? Okay.
And then the second thing I will say along those lines is I will save Dr. Nedwick and Ms. Giordano for the end, and each of them will have 60 seconds at the end of the meeting, right?
No, they can go now along with this if it's about this comment, as long as there's nobody else, as long as no one else.
Oh, okay, great.
Yeah, no,
Wonderful,
it's just,
thank you.
Yeah.
Okay, great. So Dr. Nedwick, go for it.
Where am I? I can't mute.
Okay, I have a couple specific questions. I'm going to turn my hat on first so you can see me, if you can't see me. So when I used to be at Stuyvesant, we would just take the PSAT on the weekends. My parents paid for it. It was never a school thing. And even when I started working here, it was never administered at school. My specific question, and I know this is harder on the families, but just to put this out there on behalf of the families, what other options exist for those students who, if they can't take it at Stuyvesant, for them to have access to the PSAT? Like citywide or system-wide, or is that being coordinated? And I'm just asking that on behalf of the families, because there got to be parents out there who need and want to know this. Because the NMSQT, I was National Merit, it's a big deal. And it's important to a lot of families. So I'm just putting that out there for everybody. All right, that's it.
Nice. Any answers?
As a non-national merit scholar, I can answer this question for Dr. Ned. I'm not sure I had any at my high school in Delaware. So the options right now, if you can look at testing sites within the College Board's website, and then you can even sort by state. I haven't checked in the month of December, but I know that prior to this, when I checked, places in New York were closing, hence why you saw news stories of some of our students going to other states to take the SAT. So I see that Mr. Jashankar had said that he believes the SAT score can be applied for national merit this year. That's not something that I have heard or seen, but I'd be so happy if somebody, Mr. Shaffron's nodding his head, he wants to put it in the chat. Yeah.
I heard that too. And happy holidays, everybody.
Yeah, I've heard, I just haven't read. So I would just love to read it.
Mr. Anderson, can I just chime in on that?
Mr. Yu, go ahead.
So that is true. SAT could be used for alternate entry into for the national merit. The issue around, and I think Dr. Ned said this, it's one of the things I know this came up with SAT as well. Again, I think New York City is in the kind of same boat, at least. I mean, everything maybe outside might be a little bit different, but in the district, you know, other high schools have been speaking with other specialized high schools and other high schools in general. because we've all had the same dilemma, and ours is a little bit more difficult because of the size that we have. And so I think this is going to be something where, we'll have to look at families would have to look outside of probably New York City, because again, assuming that if the buildings are open, then that's a different story. But if they're not, we're going to be in the same situation. But again, I think that is a possibility that families could explore as well.
Thank you. Mr. Sheffrin, I just want to confirm that your hand is still up from before. Or did you want to add?
No, my hand from before, but yes, I was confirming what Ms. Pedrick said. Yes, there's a way to use SAT, and I think that's why, but exactly for the reason of families not being able to take it in New York, that's why it is a challenge. And so any equitable way of offering it even to a limited number of students would be greatly appreciated.
Great, thank you very much. Ms. Giordano?
Hi, so I wanted to actually go off of what we were just saying. So because the SAT is also an opportunity to qualify for the National Merit Scholarship, and in the past, the school has offered the SAT in school to the juniors, many of whom that was their only opportunity. If they took the in-school SAT, the current senior class, they got the SAT in, and the ones who didn't had a lot of trouble and they weren't able to get SAT scores. So I would ask the administration to consider, if this PSAT becomes a problem, perhaps instead the school can figure out how to offer the SAT in March. We'll have a little bit more time to figure that out. And so, but I think the school, I urge the administration to figure out how to offer at least one, because it's very hard for families to find other opportunities. And the National Merit Scholarship particularly is important to so many.
Absolutely. Let me just to echo that's been our discussion in our admin meetings between Dr. Haber, Mr. Moran, Ms. Ingram, Principal Yu, to know how very important it is. Right now, we have the most national merit semifinalists in the country. So we definitely value it as something that our Stuyvesant population community would love to have.
Just one other note, and I'm glad you brought that up, Mr. Giordano. We have not, the DOE has not made a decision around the in-school SAT that's scheduled right now. They haven't canceled that, or they haven't told schools that we're not doing it. So that's a good sign. I know that's still, I think they're trying to wait for some time, but I know that they're going to want to administer or they're going to want that to happen because of the very things that you were just saying. So we are keeping a close eye on that as well, with the expectation or with the hope that that would be able to be offered.
Great, thank you. I don't see any more comments. So I think we should probably move on to the next thing on our agenda, which is wonderful. We're staying right on time. So the next thing on our agenda is report from the Remote Learning Subcommittee. Who's doing the report?
Hi, Mr. Henderson. So Sarai was the chair of the SLT subcommittee, and she would normally be presenting. Unfortunately, she's not feeling well at the moment, and she is not able to join the call. So we're sending her our support. But Shivali and I can go through the document right now and give a brief overview of what we discussed at the subcommittee. Does that sound good?
Thanks very much. Thanks very much for stepping in. Yep.
Okay, no problem. Give me 1 second to share my screen, and I'll give some context while I wait. So the SLT Remote Learning Review Subcommittee met twice between our last SLT meeting and now, and we had a really productive, really great conversations, actually some of the best conversations I've had in SLT, and really diving at the heart of like what are issues that the Stuyvesant community is dealing with, and what can we do to provide students, teachers, and families with the resources they need to make this remote learning experience work. So we entered with a lot of concerns about policies and enforcement, and the general theme that sort of came up was that there's this lack of understanding or lack of communication between constituency groups at the school. And one of the ways of solving that is through our SLT discussions and through bridging these gaps. And I think all of the constituencies, as the year has gone on, have been working to increase communication within their own constituencies and with others. So one of the ideas that emerged from our subcommittee as a really useful way to create this transparency and get everyone on the same page would be to create a list of best practices. And the idea for this was not to create necessarily like a policy that's set in stone or enforceable, but to provide recommendations, advice to facilitate remote learning for everyone who's involved. And so we compiled this list based on the outcomes of our 2 meetings, and it was sent around to all SLT members last night. Shivali and I can briefly walk through it and give an overview. I think it's pretty self-explanatory and it's pretty brief. And I think hopefully the outcome of this is that, and I defer to Ms. Maggio and Mr. Yu when it comes to this, is hopefully we can somehow approve this or reach consensus around this as an SLT, and then distribute this and share this with members of the Stuyvesant community. So this is our best practices document, and we've divided best practices into different categories for different constituency groups. And so for each constituency group, we start with just a reminder of the academic policies, and we link them there. And then for the faculty constituency group, our best practices were to announce test days between 3 days and 1 week in advance, holding office hours from 2:30 to 2:50 p.m. every day, incorporating community building and social and emotional learning into class time, and soliciting feedback from students on pacing, content assessments at regular intervals. Shivali, do you want to give an overview of the student best practices?
Yeah, sure. Like Julie mentioned, we think it's always great if students get a reminder of what the policies already are. And in addition to that, we think it's really important that students learn to communicate directly with teachers about any of the issues that they feel they've faced regarding the academic policies. And as stated in the instructional expectations, we ask that students send emails 48 hours before in order to ensure that they're giving teachers enough time to respond before following up with them. We also ask that students are reviewing their work before submitting online, and understanding that corrections can't be made after the work has been submitted.
And finally, for the parent group of the best practices, we had encouraging students to reach out for academic and or social emotional support from teachers, counselors, and other school support services. We thought about listing them all, and then we realized that there's way too many to list, which we're really grateful for. Ensuring students are maintaining good health, including rest and sleep, providing supportive, reduced stress environments for students. So this is the overview of our best practices. I think before we have another document that we worked on as a subcommittee, but before we get to that, I'd like to open this up maybe to the floor and hear any questions or feedback from members of the SLT. I know we had a lot of members on the subcommittee, but there were some who weren't able to participate. So do you guys want me to leave my screen shared, or is it all right if I take it down? Everyone should have this in their emails. I'm going to take it down for now. I can put it back.
Why don't you
up
take
if
it down?
needed.
So are there any comments or questions at this moment from members of the SLT? Great. Dr. Ned, go ahead. Sorry, Dr. Nedwick.
Yeah, that's
I'll time you.
More.
I'm sorry, Dr. Nedwick Moore.
There you go. All right. My main question really comes back to something that Sarai brought up at the last meeting when she was very articulate about all of the concerns that students had. And I almost wanted to email her about some concerns I've had with students participating in the office hours and AIS and the other things. So my question is really to the students, but really to everybody. How do we encourage more diligent participation by students in the support services? Because like I said the last time, and I've talked to a lot of people since then, very few students come to my office hours. I can get them to come, but it requires, and if it's forced, it just doesn't work. Also, 20 minutes is a tough amount of time to really get a lot done. You kind of almost have to know who's going to come ahead of time. But I really want to know from students how to get that participation and really to get them to engage with all these things that we offer. I know the counselors are promoting it and everything. And again, happy holidays.
Thank you. Just under your 1 minute. Mr. Jaishankar, could you also have a minute?
I just wanted to give one clarification to one of the points that was in the student bulletin, the bullet points for the students. It was the thing about reviewing the work. I think one thing that should be made clear, and it should be the corrections could be made, but not until after a grade has been given. I think that's the one thing I think we all want to make clear, because I think one of the problems that some of the teachers have had is that students have sometimes sent 2 or 3 requests to like submit something and said, oh, I submitted something incorrectly or something. So I think we want to be clear. Once you've submitted it, you can't make another revision until after the teacher has graded the assignment or assessment. Once that's done, we encourage making revisions and having us review them, but not until after we've graded what you've turned in the first time. Because once it's like a test in live, like we have to treat it like as if we were live in that sense. Once you've submitted it, we have to grade what's there. And if you make a mistake, you make a mistake. But so that's number one. The thing about
I'm sorry, that's 60
Sorry.
seconds. That's 60
encourage
seconds.
free periods as well for office hours. That's it.
All right. Thank you very much.
Sorry.
Sorry, Ashwin.
Oh, no.
And Mr. Sunwoo, did you want to speak, or has the moment passed?
I'll just make this really quick. I would say it's hard because some of the students are really nervous, and I understand that. So that's sort of a challenge. The only thing that I could potentially see working is maybe just verbally letting the students know. Like, I let a student know recently that she could speak to me if she ever had questions, because she did raise some concerns about, like, she's like, you know, remote learning is so stressful. Can you help me? And, like, I think just that open line of communication. But again, this is a work in progress. It's just, it's difficult. It's really, really difficult.
Yeah, indeed. Absolutely. Julian?
Sorry, I can't raise my hand with the blue hand feature because I'm sharing my screen. I thank you, Mr. Sunwoo, for your comments, and everyone. I really appreciate all of those. Going back to the to the office hours thing, we talked about this a bit at our subcommittee, and I think one of the ideas that was suggested at one point is that the amount of time for office hours maybe be extended, because 20 minutes seems like a short period of time. But we also understood that there's not a lot of students attending office hours, and how do we balance that? How do we make those a productive time for teachers and for students? And I think a lot of what our discussion revolved around at the subcommittee, and that relates to this, has to do with like the classroom environment and the culture that's created within there. And often unintentionally, part of it's Stuyvesant's reputation, part of it's just the competitive nature, part of it's the remote learning. These sort of environments where people don't feel comfortable reaching out for support, or don't feel comfortable, coming to office hours or to AIS, can be created. And I think it's very common throughout Sty, and students have different worries. They worry about how their teacher perceives them, and oftentimes these worries, what we realized in the subcommittee is there's a lot of worries that students have that can be unfounded. And sometimes, and when we have these discussions with teachers at the subcommittee, we realized, like, teachers are really accommodating and they want to support students. Like this, we have amazing supportive teachers at Stuyvesant, but it's about, like, sometimes it's about conveying that. And one of the takeaways I think we've taken from remote learning is that it can be hard to understand people's intentions and people's thoughts and the environment they're creating. So purposefully, I guess the point I'm getting at is, like, teachers purposefully emphasizing, like, feel free to come to office hours. Like, I really encourage you to come. I'll provide, like, this is what'll happen. Like that, I think that can play a supportive role. But part of this is also just like a school environment thing, and like normalizing, like, reaching out for support and getting help, which is like as with many things we discuss in the subcommittee, is it's an issue that's been going on at Sty for a long time that we've been seeking to address for a while. I'll stop talking in 1 second. I just want to respond to Mr. Jaishankar's comment to say that yes, we can edit that section to reflect the small edit that you said.
Thank you. I actually don't see any more comments or questions at this moment. So Julian Chevalier, if you wanted to share, you had one other, I believe, fairly short document you wanted to show us?
Yes. So the subcommittee created another document. I will share my screen now. And this document was more focused around policy and less around best practices and more around recommendations to the administration. And so it's just a list of 2 recommendations. It ended up looking a lot shorter than it was when we were working on it. But the recommendations really had to do with how policies are implemented. The first recommendation we had is to centralize the location of all academic policy documents through an academic policy handbook that would be easily accessible online. one of the things that we came across in the subcommittee is that we have, as you can see in this long list, like 5 or 6 different documents detailing all the different policies students and teachers need to follow. And there's even like some aspects of the homework policy are included in the instructional expectations policy, or in a different, like if I want to figure out how to do homework, I might have to even look at multiple different documents, some not even titled homework policy. So there's just a lot of confusion, and some of them are hard to access online. So we just wanted to make sure we can centralize them. And everyone on our subcommittee was really supportive of this idea of a handbook that can be given to students that really clearly outlines policy and makes it very simple. On the student side, one of the big concerns that was being raised was that, you know, there are teachers who are violating certain policies repeatedly. And I think one of the things we realized is that a lot of that can be unintentional. You know, teachers often have the best interests at heart, but they might not be aware of the policies. And so the second recommendation also seeks to address that, which is, you know, asking the administration to provide reminders to teachers, students, and families regarding academic policies. This doesn't have to be like a once every week thing, but maybe including it in newsletters or at the start of every semester, just sending a gentle reminder to people about how things function. Just making sure we're all on the same page, and that we can, we can nip a lot of the problems that happen in the bud, because oftentimes when, you know, the homework policy or testing policy is violated, by the time it gets to be addressed, it's often too late. And we want to prevent that from happening. And so this is one of the best ways we think we can do that. Yeah.
Thank you. Mr. Wisocki?
Yeah, so I think it's helpful if there are reminders coming from every level to every level, really, or every constituency to every constituency. Teachers should remind the students about the spiral of communication. They should remind them about everybody's responsibility in this to communicate. And Principal Yu sends out weekly newsletters to the faculty and communicates with the students a lot. That's a good place for a reminder. I think that's really helpful. And I think that's because, again, like Julian said, people with either the best intentions or they sometimes just don't realize that they got stuck in, if the test day, so for instance, our test day for my department falls the day we come back from vacation. And we're not doing that, obviously. That came up at a department meeting, and arrangements were made to have a different day for us to have a test. Sometimes these things happen, like tomorrow, I believe is a math test day, and some students were sharing with me that the format of their test is usually short answer in class, and then I think multiple choice at home, or it's opened up at 8 a.m. and they have till midnight to do it. So some students were a little frustrated about that. And I reminded the students about the spiral of communication. So who talked to the teacher? None of them. When did the teacher let you know about the test? Last Thursday. So like, well, you had almost a week. Nobody said anything yet. While I'm sure the teacher feels that they're working within the boundaries of the policy. I mean, it's not up to me, but I would call that a bit of a sticky situation. But at the same time, the day before, it's tough to do anything about it. So I think if people don't know, if they're confused about the policy, to ask, and along with that comes the reminders, and for the students to speak up, both either to the teacher or to the guidance counselor would be the first step.
Yeah, just want to comment. I think Julian, you made it. You started off framing it, I think, in the most accurate way. You know, a lot of this is about miscommunication or clarifying information. And I do think, you know, again, speaking with our teachers, you know, again, they can only correct what they know, and if they're informed. And I think that's a starting point. And again, too, I think, you know, we want the environment where students feel comfortable to raise it, because again, some of these things could be easily rectified, but in many cases it's because some party is not in the know. I do completely agree. I think, you know, the reminders are easy ways to just remind people about, again, why we're doing these policies, why we have them, because then ultimately it's in the best interest of the school and students and working along with our teachers to make sure, again, that they also have the time and resources to do what they need to do to make sure you all are excelling. And again, I think the centralized, I mean, I know Ms. Ingram does a really phenomenal job of trying to collect the plethora of resources that we have. So we want to make sure, again, these are easily accessible. One of the things I would say, and I really am thankful for the subcommittee for piecing these together, because I do think this will be a great opportunity for us as an administration to take a look at the recommendations, look at these best practices, and again, see what makes sense for us in relation to all our policies and the ways that we want to make sure we are fulfilling these in the best interest of the entire school community. So we will take this and review for sure.
Thank you. I just one more thing before we talk about moving on. Does anybody have comments about the first of those recommendations, which was having a centralized location for policies? Seems reasonable. Okay. So I don't see any more comments. And so I think Julian, go ahead.
Sorry for this. I just want to briefly return to Mr. Rosatsky's point, just to bring up, because I think that the topic that he brought up, that teachers assigning an exam that's sort of like a take-home exam, or at least half take-home exam, half in class, was an issue that was briefly mentioned at the subcommittee meeting. And I just want to highlight it as an important issue to address, because as our policy currently stands, tests can only be administered during class time, but it's become the norm for tests to become take-home tests and sort of blur the line between tests and projects and homework assignments. Like you'll have one class night's worth of time to do a take-home test. So it's not enough time to be a project. It's outside of test hours. So technically it classifies as a homework assignment, but yet it goes into your test grade. And so there's all sorts of confusion that's developed. And we didn't want to touch on that with these best practices. And I think it's a larger issue to delve into. But I just wanted to raise that as something that we should maybe think about addressing next semester.
Ms. Maggio?
Does it say specifically that tests only during test practice? I don't remember ever being told that I couldn't give a take-home exam.
This is a perfect example. Yeah, so this is it's in the instructional expectations document that Principal Yu created at the start of the year. I can quote verbatim actually.
Yeah, can I hear it?
Give me 1 second to pull up the document.
Created it as a cabinet, by the way, as a leadership group.
Sorry, Mr. Yes.
Not trying to take credit, I'm trying to share credit.
Sorry, give me 1 second.
Jillian, I can read it.
Oh, perfect.
Thanks.
It's teachers will restrict their live sessions to their scheduled periods and will not extend their classes beyond the allotted time. Schedule live sessions, parentheses, or assessments for times other than their assigned periods, nor let students miss other classes to attend their live sessions. So let me comment on. that.
Okay, go ahead.
Let me just comment on that. Because I think there was some confusion on this particular piece. The intent here for that particular expectation was that live sessions were going to happen during those designated periods, because from my understanding, last spring, again, it was a little bit more unstructured. And so there are times classes may have been happening outside of the normal periods. And so that was the original intent here. Now we've had take-home exams, and again, maybe we need to be much more specific about how what can and cannot be administered. I know in these cases, particularly for the take-home, one of the issues that came up was there potentially were those take-home exams plus additional homework, and this was what we felt would be an issue because take-home exams in some ways are also could also fall under like projects as well, because I know those are being assigned. What we wanted to do and try to avoid was that having a window that did not also follow suit with the homework policy. So for instance, if a take-home exam was going to be given, that it would be like following the homework policy, meaning that it could not be due until the next live session, right? And that there could not be a window. So for instance, we say, well, you have to take that test between 3 and 4, because we knew that students might have other obligations in that time. So we wanted to try to create maximum flexibility. That particular expectation, again, we can go back and review and make sure that that's clear to everyone. Because again, some of these things that we're ultimately finding out in practice because it's happening in real time. And some of the things we couldn't figure out, we couldn't figure out all the scenarios, but these are, again, good opportunities to go back and examine the language and make sure that there's clarity so that everyone is doing it. Because I do believe that everyone has good intentions and trying to figure out exactly the way to get through all the content and do it in a way that allows students to be successful. But clarity, I think, is the key thing, and we can definitely go back and make sure that there is clarity on this.
So, Mr. Yu, let me just make sure that I have this straight. It is okay to give a take-home exam so long as that exam is due at the next class period. So, and it is not in addition to other homework. Okay. Julian, does that make sense? Is that?
Somewhat. I still think there's areas of the policy that may be unclear about that, but I thank you for that clarification, Mr. Yu.
Great. There are, I'm sorry, Ms. Maggio, did you want to respond, or does that? Sweet. Dr. Nedwick Moore.
So I had a question, because if we're talking about limiting the time, which is what it seems like item 2 is talking about, that it can only be during the class period, I'm curious about what the expectations are for teachers for makeup exams. I've had numerous situations where I've had to sit for hours and schedule these things, certainly not during my class day, because we couldn't make it work with that student. And this has happened probably about 5 times since September, and I've only given exams 3 times. So I'm wondering how we can address that and this issue of the makeup exams, which is, and this issue, sorry, of the take-home exams. It's more specifically in the policy to give more explicit guidelines to the teachers and to the students. I'm hoping that we can address that at some point.
Great, thank you. Yeah, it cuts both ways for sure. We have to put a lot of time in with this as well. Mr. Jayashankar?
Just one little context was that one of the reasons this thing came up about potentially doing take homes was because, for example, because of the 1 to 5 and 6 to 10 split, some sections for teachers are meeting on 2 different days. So like it would force us to do like 3 times the work in terms of making up the test for 1 and 2 days. That was just too much. So what some of us have, so like that was sort of where that came in, just for context. I don't know. I can tell you what I do, but I'm not going to, because to waste time. But I think one thing to allow a question for Mr. Yu and Ms. Pedrick, you're here as well. Is there something that we could do regarding extended time students? Because for the right now, a lot of us are sitting on a Zoom call for beyond time and a half to almost double for students who have extended time after like 5th period or after 10th period, depending on the day. Is there something that can be done to look into that? Because that's a little exhausting for us from a faculty point of view. And, you know, we do the best we can, but is that something that the leadership team, as far as the administration, could look into for the spring term?
I will say that we're always looking for different ideas on how to improve the extended time testing. I've been saying that for all the years that I've been here, and we've made little incremental changes, which has been great. And I'd also like to encourage all teachers who are here on this call, who I can see and who I can't see, to please consult with your assistant principal for different ideas on how your respective departments can offer those services.
Okay, thank you. We are exactly at our allotted time for this agenda item. Ms. Maggio? Do you want to extend it, Ms. Maggio? All right.
I have an announcement at the end before we leave. So that's all. That's what I thought we were doing. Just kidding.
Okay. Our next agenda item is observer comments, and I believe I'm just scrolling up in the chat. So it looks as though we have a number of observer comments. And just a reminder, I actually don't exactly remember how this works, but technically, the first person is Ari Stewart. Second is Lana.
Yeah, hold
I'm
on.
sorry, go ahead,
No,
Ms.
it's all
Maggio.
good. Miss Ingram, are more of the parents from the list in the meeting now, or do we still only have one of the parents?
No, but Jung Song, I'm going to find the person and give them commenting ability. That was the only one in attendance.
Perfect. And then Dr. Ned.
So we have one.
We have one parent who is in the meeting, and then after she speaks, if Dr. Ned, do you still have a comment or did you already say it during the meeting today?
I did everything I wanted to do. Unless
So-
new things come up, then no, thank you. And happy holidays again.
Yay. So much spirit in here. It's awesome. Okay, so Jung Song, we do ask that you limit your comment to 60 seconds. And I'm sorry, I'm going to be rude and like let you know when you have 30 seconds left. So please go ahead.
Yeah. Oh, I didn't expect. I didn't expect. But thank you so much. And well, like my daughter is a senior, and I really appreciate that she's been, doing a lot of work remotely, and I see all the teachers' dedication, and she's, even though it is very hard time, but her senior year is full of a lot of learning and excitement. So sort of I really appreciate that we are still in part of Stuyvesant community, and that this will be our last year. So just wanted to say thank you all, and happy holidays, everybody. Thank you.
Thank you.
Oh my God, that was the most lovely observer comment ever.
That was the best. Yeah, I'm turning off the stopwatch. You can keep talking.
Thank you. I have a younger daughter. She is expecting to take a test to SAT this year. So we are very grateful for the kind of new announcement by the mayor. So thank you.
That's great. That's great. Thank you so much.
Happy holidays. Thank you.
Thank you. Happy holidays. I believe the last thing that we have left to do together is to listen to whatever Ms. Maggio has to tell us as an announcement.
The DOE has sent out information about the training for SLT members. And so you guys, if everybody's been on SLT in the years past, they usually sent us a webinar that we have to watch on our own, and that shows that we did it, and and that's it. This year, they are making us watch it at the SLT meeting. So in January, we will be having our meeting for the first part. It'll be on the agenda, and then we're going to end the meeting for public viewing and for alternates, and the members of the SLT will stay on, and we will enjoy the training of the SLT in January. I just wanted to let everybody in the public know that's why we're kicking you out early in January. It's not because we don't love you and don't want to hang out with you. It's because, trust me, you don't want to watch. Happy holidays, everybody. Have a happy new year. Eat lots of really good food. Everybody rest, draw, be outside, stay off your screen, stop playing video games, and we'll see everybody in 2021.
Thank you.
Yep. Happy holidays.
Holidays.
Happy holidays. Merry
Happy
Christmas.
holidays.
Happy holidays,
Everybody.
everyone.
Enjoy.
Holidays, everyone.
Gary,
Bye.
bye.
Bye, y'all.
Gary,